we go on and meet our next speaker, the Colombian in origin, but New York City living and working, Veronica Wulff, a director of media operations in international social impact at SESAME workshop. Welcome, Veronica. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm going to pull up my PowerPoint, so just give me 1 minute.
Okay.
Can everybody see that?
Yes. No, we can't see it. We just see you. Okay. Now it's okay.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. So today I'm going to walk you through the ins and outs of producing international programming at SESAME Workshop. I'll share with you a little bit about our history, our process, our best practices, a couple of examples of our productions, and hopefully there'll be some tips and strategies you could take away when you're creating your own content for global markets. This past November 10th, we celebrated 52 years of Sesame Street. You know, at the time when it was created, Sesame Street was a groundbreaking show. It was created on the heels of the civil rights movement. It featured a diverse cast that you see here of humans as well as Muppets. And they all resided together in harmony in a neighborhood called Sesame Street. And Sesame Street, it was an educational preschool show. It was made for kids from economically disadvantaged communities, and it was made to help them prepare for school. The idea originated from a question that our founder, Joan Gans Cooney, posed, which was, can kids learn from watching television? Can they learn their ABCs and 1, 2, 3s the same way they were learning jingles from commercials by watching television? And what I love about this origin story personally is that it starts with a question, you know, and at Sesame and in life, we encourage questions. That's the best way to learn. It also, there was a need in the market that was identified. And on top of that, there was an observation made, something really out of the box, you know, there was a note taken that, hey, kids are learning these jingles. What else can they learn this way? And so it took a team of experts in production and research and content development and visionaries, really, who believed in the power of media and the magic of the Muppets to take a calculated risk and, you know, test this idea. And 52 years later, we're here. And take note, because what I gave you is pretty much the ingredients for the secret sauce at Sesame. So since the 70s, since we launched Sesame Street in the US, we shortly thereafter, we launched Sesame Street adaptations in Latin America, in Europe, and now we're also in Africa, Asia, and Australia. And here's just a little snapshot of all the different street signs around the world. We're in over 150 countries, and we reach almost 200 million children worldwide. Here is just the current projects, some of the current projects that we're working on in international. We have the Sesame Street adaptations, which are essentially local versions of Sesame Street that have their own Muppets, their own films, their own stories. Examples of that are like Sesamo in Latin America or Sisimpur in Bangladesh. We have our humanitarian efforts. We've created a show called Ahlan Simpson for the Syrian response region. And we're currently working on another humanitarian initiative called Play to Learn, which reaches Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh. And then we have some outreach projects like Wash Up, which is it's an outreach project around global health. And Raya, the puppet that you see there, is the one who leads our global health initiatives. So all this work is different, you know, no matter where we work, you know, we really tailor it to the regions that we're in, but it's all predicated on the Sesame model. which is a combination, a beautiful trifecta of producers and production personnel working with content specialists and educators and researchers. We have a team here, but we also mirror the same team setup in the countries that we work in. So the process begins, once we get funding, we do a needs assessment. We want to understand the critical needs of kids and families on the ground. We figure out what those topics and important themes are that we want to tackle that season or on that project. We create a we form a content seminar with educational advisors to help advise on these topics and themes. And from that, we create a set of educational objectives, which is essentially a curriculum. It's the key messages that show is going to be about. The curriculum is our production's Bible, if you will. It's the heart of everything that we do. After the curriculum seminar, the content seminar, we have creative workshops. The creative workshops involve the educational advisors, production, writers, sometimes puppeteers, and we work together to create the show or the program. So we will talk about who are the puppets or the human cast that's going to be in this show. What are those key messages? How are we going to bring it to life on screen through these characters, through the stories? What is the street or the set going to look like? Are we going to do live action films, stories told through the eyes of children? Are we going to have children on the set? There's lots of questions and creative ideas that are discussed at these workshops. We also conduct a series of trainings. So we have writers' workshops where we specifically work with writers on writing stories and outlines and stories around these different topics and themes. It's a lot for a writer to take on. They have to write to a curriculum. They have to write for Muppets, and they have to write for a certain age set of children. We also conduct puppeteer training. So we work with local performers on the ground to train them to be puppeteers. We conduct auditions, we go through a casting process, and then we cast them for these various roles. We also do the same with live action filmmaking or maybe animation, as well as director workshops. So once we get the creative underway, we do some formative research. We like to test our content. That's what we do at SESAME. Everything we do, we really test and research because we want to make sure the content is going to work and resonate with our audience before it goes on the screen. And so we might test scripts, we might test animatics, the early stages of animations. We might test a live action film, we might shoot some Muppet content and test that. If there's a particular topic or theme that we're really curious about, or maybe it's very new to us, and we're not sure exactly how to go about something, we'll want to test that as well. And we also test language. We might have content that's dubbed, and we want to see if we're capturing the dialect correctly. So once that's underway, we take the findings from formative research and we apply them to our production, and we continue and we produce the show. We distribute across many different means. We do mass media, we do outreach, we do radio, mobile, digital, social. Once the content is out there, we sometimes conduct a summative evaluation at the end of the project to evaluate whether our messaging had the impact that we were seeking, if there were changes in attitude and knowledge and behaviors with our audience. And then we take that information and it's cyclical. We start it over again with the next season. So these are the different streams, distribution streams, as I mentioned. We're more than just television these days. We're on mobile, online. We stream content. We also create content for the adults in children's lives, their parents, their caregivers, teachers, facilitators. We'll get this content out through community centers. There might be community viewings of our content. We do home visits as well, especially in our outreach programs. And we also create print resources and print materials such as activity sheets or coloring pages. So as producers, there's a lot on our mind. Our end goal is to make sure that we're reaching kids everywhere. We want them to reach their highest potential, and we want to help them grow smarter, stronger, and kinder. And as we're creating content, we're thinking about the brand. It's a legacy brand. It's over 50 years old. There are a lot of established, well-known, beloved characters all around the world. We want to stay true to the integrity of the program. We want the content to be relevant. So our curriculum is tailored to the kids that we're working with in these particular countries. It's contextualized. We also create global content in addition to contextualized content. Global content can work anywhere. And the reason we do that is to help build up our library, because there are some places in the world where we want to be, or they want a Sesame Street, and there might not be the funding to do so, but we could package global content that's already been tested and proven, and dub it into these local languages. We also need to stay competitive. We need to understand the markets that we enter, and we do that through market research, and we learn about our competition out there. It is a very saturated market, and there is a lot of great content. It's not only on television, it's coming at you on every different platform. So that's something that we try to do. We try to really stay cutting edge, and we do that by being innovative. We do that by changing and learning and growing. We want to make sure our content is impactful. Here are our messages. This is our curriculum. This is what the show's about. Are kids learning from it? And also, are they engaged? Because if they're not engaged, then they're not going to really watch. So all these things are on our minds when we're creating content. We work very closely with educators, as I mentioned at the top with our model. To create global content, we decided to create a global content advisory. And this lovely picture here was taken in 2019 when all our local advisors and educators and content specialists on the ground came to New York and for this global content advisory. And now we tap into them whenever we're creating global content to make sure it's going to work in these various regions, whether it's India or Nigeria or Israel or the Middle East. So in Latin America as well, we have representation all across the board. We recently, this past summer, created this amazing chart, and it's a chart that's going to keep on iterating and growing. It's we refer to it as our International Considerations Guide. And what it is, it's just a very simple list of topics and themes, and we have tabs for each of the countries. And we had our advisory team here respond to each of these items. So for instance, there's, a grouping of animals. And in that list, you have a list of animals. And one of them, let's say, is cat. So in most regions, a cat, if we have it in the show, whether it's a Muppet or a storyline or something, it's fine. But what came out of that was that black cats are an issue. Black cats are kind of associated with magic or with evil. So that's something that we wouldn't include in our global content production. We created this considerations guide because we started finding, when we were creating content, the same types of things were coming up when we would review. So this guide will go to writers and to those production people at the very top of the projects before they start thinking of ideas and creating, because it'll help inform them on what to create. So Sesame Workshop and Sesame Street, this is all preschool content. Fairly recently, we embarked on something that's not preschool content. It's actually around menstrual health management. And it was part of our Wash Up initiative, which is on water, sanitation, and hygiene. We did a program called Girl Talk, and it was aimed at girls in Zimbabwe ages 10 to 14. And it was really created to dispel, the myths and bad information around menstruation. And we just piloted this in 100 schools, and we were aiming to reach 25,000 girls. We decided to go with animation because animation resonates really well with audiences, especially the youth. And we created this character named Dee Dee, you see here in the middle there. She was originally created on our Nigeria show, Sesame Square, a few years ago. She was in a format in that show, slightly older. We envisioned her slightly older at that time, but we brought her back in a different animated style and aged her down a bit. And we also created a little bit of lore around her and related her to Raya, who's the global health ambassador of Wash Up. And she was her older sister. She's 14 years old, and she's, you could say, an expert. She's the go-to friend that knows everything about periods. So when we work in various places around the world, we really rely on our local teams. You know, we're not going in saying it has to be this way. We want our local teams to really take ownership. They're the ones that are taking the lead. We're just there kind of supervising and imparting our knowledge on, you know, working on previous projects, you know, and our production sensibilities around puppeteering and writing for kids, etc. When we began this project, we had to start somewhere with designs. It was pretty new for us, except for Dee Dee. We had an idea of what she would look like, but we wanted to create a cast of friends for her. We have Raya there too. We already had that established as well. She's the green little girl there. So we asked our stakeholders and our content specialists on the ground, please send us some images, you know, real life images, kids in school uniform who are, you know, between the ages of 10 and 14, boys and girls. Send us, you know, the landscapes, you know, what does it look like outside their window? What does it look like inside their homes? And from there, we passed this information on. We had discussions and we shared it with the animators who rendered these designs. From this project, we created 5 3-minute videos. We dubbed the videos into Zimbabwe English and Shona, a local language. We created a training guide, which we shared with facilitators and teachers in schools. We also created activity books and flashcards as supporting material. We also provided materials to make their own pads. And the video was shown through a Pico projector, which is, you see it in the lower right-hand corner there. It's essentially, you know, these little, if you're not familiar with it, it's just a little projector and you put in like an SD card, or you could plug your phone or computer to it and show it on a big wall, empty wall, or projection screen of some sort. We worked with mother support groups. You know, we passed information on to them. We had discussions with them. And we also had girl talk clubs with these girls. Here's an example. It's a cut down version. It's just 1 minute of a 3-minute episode, just to give you an idea of what was discussed.
Hello, Daddy. We had our football match today, and our star player almost missed the game. Where is Sanders? The game starts in 15 minutes. Ooh, getting married. We should start warming up. I can't play today. What? Why? What's wrong, Sandra? I'm having my period, remember? I can't play football while I'm having my period. Of course you can. It's never stopped me before. When I get my period, it can be uncomfortable, but doesn't keep me from doing anything that I want to do. I go to school, I study, and I go out and play football, just like any other day. What if she gives it to the other players? That can't happen. When you get your period, it is something happening to your body. It doesn't affect anyone else. Well, I do want to play. Your feet definitely wanna play.
So when we work internationally, as I mentioned, we do a lot of research. We did a multi-country research fairly recently, and from that, the research team had some recommendations for how to approach our content moving forward. They recommended that we, we're in a Muppet world at Sesame, but they recommended adding animation or some kind of animated aspect, as you see here in the picture. There's Basma from our Ahwan Simpson show, and she is with the Dabka dancers who are animated there. They also told us handle fewer curricular goals. So previously, Sesame Street had like a magazine format style, which were just kind of little bits of shorts strung together. And there were a lot of curricular goals throughout the episode. And we found that it wasn't really sticking as well as we liked with the audience. So now we're really focusing our episodes on fewer goals, as well as fewer characters. Sesame Street here and internationally, our cast of characters, it's so much fun to create Muppets, and we want to see, a plethora of Muppets on screen. But we were finding that kids weren't really connecting with any of them, and their characters needed to be a little bit more distinct. So that was the other thing, really create functioning role for each of these characters that we're going to introduce on screen and keep them few. We also were advised to have a consistent format, a predictable order with our episodes. Kids like to feel really empowered and they want to know what's coming next, and it makes them feel in control. And repetition. Repetition really helps with engagement. It also helps with learning. On our co-productions, this one is Takalani Sesame, which is our production in South Africa. We started experimenting with narrative through lines. So we created these wraparounds with a set of characters, typically led by Elmo and Zuzu, one of the local characters on the ground. And then in between, we had blocks, or what we call formats, or block formats. And they range about 5 minutes each, and they have a set number of characters that you'll see in each of those little episodes, and they are around a particular theme. One block that we created in South Africa that became a global block, meaning this is something that we can put in our library and use in other productions and dub into different languages. We created something called Playful Problem Solving. It was a 5-minute block, and it featured Bosma and Jod. Bosma is our little girl Muppet, and Jod is her friend. And they're polar opposites. Bosma has a lot of energy, and she's really zippy, and doesn't really think before she does, and Jod is quite the opposite. And so these playful problem solving episodes, they're about task persistence and playful learning. We used that block as well as a few other blocks to create a series called Sesame Street Friends. Some of the other blocks you'll see in the photos here. There's Cookie's Crummy Pictures. There is Monster Foodies with Cookie Monster and Gonger. There's Super Grover 2.0. We had, in the season 1 that we did, we had some shorts that we produced for our COVID response. We also had Abby's Amazing Adventures and Elmo's Wonderful World. We created a predictable structure. We focused on these characters. We created a beautiful new open that showcased Muppet and animation, which is what you see throughout the episode. And we also dubbed this content into initially 5 different languages for the African market. Amharic for Ethiopia, Somali for Somalia, Swahili for Kenya, Hausa and Yoruba for Nigeria. And so when it comes to packaged content like this, taking formats that already exist, a lot of work goes into it. We're working with our content specialists, figuring out the themes across all these different pieces of content, how they're going to work together, how they're going to appear in the episode, whether it's going to work in the markets that we're venturing in. We work with our global advisory team to look at the content we're proposing to use. And then there's the whole dubbing portion, dubbing component of creating the series. We work with a local dubbing house in Africa for these 5 languages. There were a couple of houses actually that we worked with, and we provide them with character descriptions for each of the characters that are going to be in those episodes. Here's a character description for Elmo. In addition to that, we provide voice intonation information, descriptions. How does the voice sound? We also provide video examples. We have discussions with the dubbing house, the editors, eventually with the voice artists about who these characters are, what they sound like, how they relate to other characters in the episodes. what are the formats about that they're going to appear in. And the scripts, the dubbing houses, they translate the scripts that we provide to them into these languages. Those scripts are reviewed by proofreaders that we bring on board because unfortunately we don't speak every language. So we want to make sure that the translations are accurately rendered, that they're capturing the character, they're true to the identity of the character and the integrity of the educational messages, which is very important to us. I'll tell you a very funny short story. During this process, I guess one of the translators may not have watched the segment while they were translating the script. And our proofreader had reviewed the script and noticed that there was a line of dialogue about one of the characters who is Chicken. It's a chicken, Muppet. And the character had said, oh, Chicken is so sweet, meaning generous, kind, wonderful. And the translator had actually translated it as chicken is delicious, yummy, as in edible. And we don't eat our Muppets on Sesame Street. So that was something that was a really major red flag for me. And it really just kind of reinforced the importance of why we have proofreaders looking at these scripts. Through this process, we created something new. We decided to create something called the Key Names and Places chart. And each of the translators for the various languages would capture how the phrase was translated. So if, Cookie Monster says, me want cookie, and that's a very popular phrase, the translators would include me want cookie in the various languages, so that if this went to another translator for another segment, they would have this reference and there would be continuity across the translations. Lots of review happens from script to the actual dubbing. We'll have our translators and proofreaders listen to the dubbing, and we do test the content to make sure the dialect is correct, that the voices are easy to understand, because these are Muppet voices and sometimes they're really gravelly and gruff or very high pitched. So we want to make sure that it's resonating with our audiences, children and their parents alike. Here's just a very short example of Sesame Street, of a playful problem solving, which appears in Sesame Street Friends in the various languages.
Please don't give up now, Bossman. We really want to go to space. But this is so frustrating. Mama, ṣùgbọ́n ó máa rí iṣẹ́ tí o bá túbọ̀ gbìyànjú. Òótọ́ ni, a ní láti gbìyànjú sí i. Lákọ̀ọ́kọ́, o ní láti mí sínú gan ni. Shawara mai kyau. Wannan a koda yaushe yana taimaka mana mu kwantar da hankalinmu. Ku yi tare da mu. Ja numfashi. Sannan sai fitar da shi. وعجزت فرسمنا سوش قيسي وعندي أرواحنا ما كل إسكتر يا فكرنا سوا فكرة عندهم عندها سالم Grupo su karuka chini na mawe yakadonoka. Hivyo safari hii tutatana roketi kwenye upande wa chini na kuweka nafasi ya kamba kushika. Hiyo kamba haitateleza kwenye roketi. Jaribu hivyo.
So you see there, we try to really stay true to the characters no matter what language we're dubbing in.
Aw, please don't give up now.
So I just wanted to wrap up with some best practices, and I think this can work for any age group, really, for any content that's being created. Keep messages clear, simple, write good stories, have some sort of story structure, clear, defined characters that demonstrate and model inclusion and respect. Use humor effectively, depending on your audience. For the younger audience, we don't really rely on the funny to carry the educational, because all kids are going to remember is what they laughed at. Try watching with the sound off. This is something we sometimes do, even though we don't sometimes understand the language and don't need to do that. We'll turn off the sound. So we're not depending on those kind of musical or cues or sound effects. And we'll see, the screen, is it just talking heads? Are we making the most of our Muppets? Is it, are we using props in the best way possible and the set that they're on? It's also something we do for accessibility. We might want to add sign language component or to an episode, or we might want to add closed captioning. These are the things that we're looking at when we're creating our content. Use visual elements to counter stereotypes. So if you have a girl Muppet, instead of her maybe wearing a pink dress, and having a tea party, maybe we're going to go with her, in sweats, kicking around a soccer ball. Dad, instead of dad, carrying a briefcase and going to work, we'll probably have him in the kitchen washing dishes and setting up the table for dinner while mom comes home from a long day's work. Pattern and repetition for our audience, it helps with recall and comprehension. So, we do have songs, we do have rhymes and fun sounds. Invite kids to participate. With us, we have kids participating by, calling them in, come in, we're looking at camera, we're calling them to come in. And, we might say, oh, clap your hands with me in a song. There are other ways now that, you could have your audience participate, which is like offline, on social media. It doesn't have to be on TV or, on a streamed content. You can have them participate on social. Sometimes we have kids send in and families actually send in photographs. Maybe their kid has a really cool costume of Cookie Monster, or, maybe they baked some really great cookies and they want to share recipes. So we do those kinds of things on social. And at the end of the day, don't be afraid to try new things. Sometimes we're afraid of failing, and that's normal, but I think you get a lot of lessons. I think we all know that when you try something, you fail, you learn. And remember always to have fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Veronica. That was a lot of information to digest, and really, the work you're doing is really a blessing. Together, research, engagement, so nice content all over the world, and adapting characters for the continents we are focusing today. Arab world, Africa, Asia. Thank you so much for your work, and thank you so much for sharing all this information. Keep up the good job. I'm jealous of your job. Maybe I'll come back to New York and find you again.
I'd love that. I would love that. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.